Good evening. Welcome to Riverside Center for Innovation, our zoning permits and planning workshop. It'll be led by Corey Lehman and David Green this evening. My name is James Myers Jr. I am the Director of Community and Business Development at Riverside Center for Innovation. Tonight's topic will be something that you were looking to tap into, but we do have two subject matter experts in terms of looking at zoning permits and planning when it comes to working with the city of Pittsburgh. Also, I have my colleague, Adam Gerard, on the call this evening, who is our lead in the office. I'm actually going to pass it over to him for a second, and then we'll lead into our presentation by our two gentlemen here that are serving as our SMEs.
Yeah. Hey everyone, how are you doing? Thanks for signing up. We're super excited to have this webinar for you guys tonight. If you have questions, tonight's the night to ask these questions. We've got two awesome guest speakers from the city. They're gonna hopefully be able to answer most of them, and if not, maybe we'll be able to figure it out later. So if you have questions, ask them. Also, the DBRC. If you are not a DBRC member, feel free to hit our website, sign up for the DBRC. That's how you get the newsletter. The DBRC newsletter has all of our events, from stuff like this to OSHA to Tier 3 signups, which are coming up. I know many of you have already gone through Tier 3, but Tier 2 signups and Tier 1 are always going on as well as quite a few other workshops and even bid opportunities. So literally everything you need to know is in that little email that comes out and in that web blast. So sign up for the DBRC, get that information. And if you don't yet, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, follow us on LinkedIn, because we have all of our events are being pushed on there as well. So anytime that you want to know, hey, I want to know what's going on, you can hit any of those resources, and it'll have all of our current updated information. So tonight, just lean in, ask your questions, yeah, and just press on in. So I'm going to hand it over to Corey and David.
Sure. One thing before we get started, that was a great plug for our DBRC. I know we do have people attending tonight that are members of our Diversity Business Resource Center, but we're also going to put those links in the chat. Also, I know we had a few people that's actually tapped into our pro bono legal consultation with Reed Smith. Please feel free to do so with that as well. I'll actually put that link in the chat as well. So with no further delay, I would like to lean into Corey and David this evening.
Hey everyone. Hi, I'm Corey Lehman. I'm the zoning administrator and an assistant director in the city's planning department, and work pretty heavily with development activities in the city, reviewing them for compliance with the zoning code, which gets into a whole lot of stuff that we'll talk about in the presentation. I've been working I started working at the city in the zoning office in 2006. So I've been around this work. I also worked at a nonprofit called River Life for about a year and a half, and returned in this role to the city in 2014. So been around this space for a while, and hoping we can answer any questions that you might have.
And I'm Dave Green. I'm the Assistant Director and Building Code Official for the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspection. My perspective is from the life safety or building code, and similar to Corey, been with the city for a while, a little shorter period from 2012, but I think between the two of us, hopefully we can answer any questions you have, and feel free to jump in at any point. Some of these things we will share the presentation with you guys, so you'll have it when you go. So there's some additional information. We may not cover everything as we go. Feel that it could be a resource later, and we'll try to focus on the things that I think you guys have an interest in. So, and I think first up we have I think Adam shared a host of questions that came from interested parties. So these are the questions we tried to answer in this presentation. So pause for a moment there just to make sure everything's there.
Yeah, but we're gonna, I think
Yeah.
we discussed, we're gonna just say welcome you to jump in as we're going
Yeah.
through. We have a lot of content to cover, Some of it may be very relevant to you, some of it may not. But I'd say, just jump in and ask us questions as we're going through. I think that'll work the best.
And if you want to go next, I think we have an overview of what we'll cover in response to those questions. So each of us will give a quick overview of our agencies, or relatively quick. We'll talk about understanding zoning map, verifying existing legal use, when you need a permit, submitting a permit, tracking a permit, questions about home occupations, and then some recommendations that we would make.
That's right. Sorry, did it start over? I'm having some technical things here. So,
Yeah, it just zoomed out here.
all right.
Just zoomed out to the overview of it.
All right. You know what? Hold on a second. I think this will work best. Can everybody see the presentation? I know it's not the full screen, but
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
okay. All right, good.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna keep it this way, and that way I don't have it doesn't start over on me. All right.
So in terms of the PLI overview, PLI's mission is to provide a better quality of living to the residents of the city of Pittsburgh by increasing safety in the built environment. Quick org chart, there are 3 divisions within PLI. Go ahead, Corey. The first division is the operations division. This division works with ensuring maintenance of building and property, enforces zoning and preservation code if a PLI permit is not required, also perform proactive inspections of fire protection systems, condemned properties, and facilitate city-funded demolitions, respond to constituent complaints, and perform license-related inspections. And that unit's about, I think about 15 to 20 people total. And the next division is construction division, which I'm the assistant director of. We're responsible for reviewing and inspecting construction permits and occupancy of buildings and structures. The permits that we issue are focused on trades primarily specific. So for general trades, there's a building permit. We issue a separate permit for mechanical systems, a separate permit for electrical systems, separate for fire alarm, separate for fire suppression, separate for commercial signs, and new permit type that will be launched later this month, stormwater permits for larger scale developments subject to the stormwater code. Quick note, Allegheny County Health Department reviews and inspects plumbing permits, but other than that, if there's any construction activity, essentially from the lot lines in, you'll be dealing with PLI. The construction division also inspects and enforces for the zoning preservation code when a PLI permit is required. And the volume is slightly less, but also responding to constituent complaints related to construction activities. The last component of our department is administrative, really supports our day-to-day. If you've ever submitted an application, you've probably interacted with our app techs. There are public-facing portion of our department. They intake license application, PLI permit applications, zoning applications. This unit also administers licenses, everything from trade licenses to amusement devices, peddlers, etc. There's some license types most people may not be aware of, but that's within this unit. This unit also answers general inquiries, manages records, takes care of finance accounting, community engagement, and technology improvements. We refer to it as the spine of our department. In terms of our regulations, there's a national organization called the International Code Council. They develop and publish codes which are adopted across the country. Here in Pennsylvania, those published codes are adopted through a process with the Department of Labor and Industry, and the same code cycle and the same codes are enforced across the state through L&I. And then here locally within the city of Pittsburgh, PLI enforces those regulations as we've locally amended them. You may have heard of the state law referred to as the Uniform Construction Code, or UCC. Just a overview of where our laws come from on the construction front. And a handful of resources. I won't spend too much time here, but just links for various things, everything from info specific to permits, as well as permit process, the codes we're enforcing, policies, code interpretations. I would say good to note, PLI App Tech, that email goes to all of the app techs, and they are a great resource for general process questions. If you ever get into a bind on something, I would utilize that. PLI Records is where you can request records, including copies of certificates of occupancy. And then we also post the assignments for construction inspectors. They are assigned by type of inspection and wards within the city.
All right, this is me. So what does city planning do? Our department covers a lot of ground. We work to establish and sustain orderly and consistent land use in the city of Pittsburgh. What that really means is, you know, we work with communities and try to help establish plans for how development will impact, you know, impact those communities, and you know what types of development can happen in a community. That's through the zoning code and through neighborhood plans. And we develop and implement policy and projects and programs, and with the goal of sustaining and enhancing an equitable and a sustainable and thriving city of neighborhoods. So the Department of City Planning is broken into 5 different divisions. And actually, I think working with the new administration, we may have streamlined it down to 4, but I think it's still, you know, the functions are still there. So we have our public art and civic design division, who manage the city's public art collection. And they work with the cities and really help run the city's art commission, which looks at, you know, everything from new projects at the city zoo, because that's on city property, to new works of public art, works within parks and other places that are really in the public realm. The strategic planning division is one of the large divisions in the department. They look at long-range planning, they add neighborhood planning, they work on the city's comprehensive plan, and they also include some environmental planning, so folks that work with stormwater management. But it includes the community planners that will come to community meetings and help assist with neighborhood plans. We have our sustainability and resilience division, which works with the sort of looking at Pittsburgh's future on a longer term, looking at how energy is used both by the city and the impacts of our regulations. to to have a sort of a sustainable and a resilient future. It can also include environmental factors such as flood management and dealing with other impacts from climate change. We have the Zoning and Development Review Division, which is another large division in our department. That's the one that I work with, and our team, we manage the city's City Planning Commission, the city's Zoning Board of Adjustments, the Historic Review Commission. So we have preservation planners on our team. We also run the city's design review program. So we're also looking at how buildings are designed. So really we'll touch and look at everything from, even small, like 4 units and up residential developments, all the way to, the largest projects in the city. And that includes having an architecture peer review board, working with local architects to provide some peer review from the city's perspective, and looking at how a building fits within the context of the neighborhood and the community that it's going into. And then our division also does plan review, so it looks at all of the new development that's happening in the city, from everything from a residential deck or HVAC unit all the way up to new construction of large commercial projects. And we have a lot of different process, which I'll touch on a little bit too. And it really depends on what zoning district, where in the city something is located, the scale, what it is that someone is proposing. And our goals are ultimately to make sure that there is, clear and fair rules of play, that so when somebody's doing a development, that if you're doing it in one part of the city, the rules should be reasonable, and it should be easy to understand. But at the same time, we're also protecting the community's perspective on the impacts of development on a community. So we're responding to neighborhood plans, we're responding to the goals of that community when we set those standards. I'll keep going here. So types of city planning projects. We have projects that are citywide, looking at, actually one that we have coming out really soon is the housing needs assessment, which is looking at all of the housing needs within the city for affordable housing, for diversity of housing types, really covering all of the bases. And that's a citywide policy and plan. And in that case, it's a study, and it'll inform future moves that we make with our zoning code and with other policies in the city. We have district level planning, so looking at an entire area of the city or a neighborhood. The one shown here was the Eco Innovation District, which looked at Uptown and West Oakland. And first that started off as a plan, and then it resulted in regulations. We had zoning code amendments that responded to the goals and the interests, the community's stated goals and needs out of that planning process. And then implementation, working with community stakeholders, working with other non-government organizations, and other areas of the other organizations within the city, and other government organizations, to partner with and implement plans that are beyond private development, that that get into achieving city goals, like say a parklet. All right, so the Zoning and Development Review Division, I covered most of this when I was talking about it earlier. We support the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board, the Contextual Design Advisory Panel, and the Historic Review Commission. We review the permits for compliance with the city's zoning code. And we develop updates to the zoning code to incentivize and require development to meet citywide and neighborhood-specific goals. Good example of that is high quality, sustainable, and affordable development. That's what we're most often driving for. And then we provide consultation for certain types of medium scale or if it's a really complex or challenging or a large scale development. We offer a service where for a nominal fee, we'll spend an hour with applicants and really walk through the what are the possible red flags of your project, what's the community process. We'll pull in some of the other, we'll pull in a neighborhood planner who can speak to the dynamics within that community. We'll pull in sometimes a representative from the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure who can talk about if there's transportation related impacts or requirements, studies. And again, that kind of thing happens for more the larger scale development, but it is a service that we offer. So talking about zoning, zoning is fundamentally, it's a part of the city's code of law, and it regulates how structures on private properties are used, where they're located and what form they take. Regulate uses, which really is one of the sort of the fundamental building blocks of how zoning works. And so, if you're in a district that, typically only permits residential, that's sort of the character of that particular area of a neighborhood. And somebody wants to say, come in and put in a manufacturing building right next to your residential home, that's how we're restricting that kind of thing from happening. But there's a lot more, we have a lot of mixed use districts in our zoning code, which allow a lot of diversity of uses throughout the city. So it's not always just commercial here and residential there. We try to allow a lot of diversity of use types throughout a lot of the city. There are a few different levels of permission and process that come with the uses. Some that are permitted by right and don't really require any additional process. Some that are called administrator's exceptions, which is just the term. It doesn't mean that the zoning administrator has some magic wand to grant an exception. And that just requires some additional process, making sure that certain standards are met, but it's still an administrative approval. Then there are special exceptions, which are heard by the city's zoning board of adjustments. It requires a hearing, but it's still something that's permitted. And then there are some uses that are unpermitted, as I said. If you're in a district that only allows residential and somebody comes in and says, I want to put in, a bank next door, where there's a commercial district down the road that might be a better location for the bank. This is where that's how, where something would be not permitted or prohibited. We have a lot of standards, pretty typical of most zoning codes. You get into dimension standards that regulate setbacks. So where a building is located within a lot, height of the building, the total lot area, sometimes lot area for a number of units, and then regulate based on floor area. Those are all controls that regulate density. But our code, and we've done a lot over the last 10, 15 years to look at more modern tools, some performance based incentives, really thinking about the code as a way to achieve the goals of community plans and the goals of the city. So for example, allowing in some areas additional building height, if you're meeting certain goals like providing affordable housing or having more than the minimum amount of stormwater management, or having sustainable energy use. So those are some examples. We also regulate parking. We regulate business and advertising signs, and we regulate cell phone antennas and towers. And we regulate the city's floodplain ordinance, which can be really important, especially with climate change. I'm trying. I feel like I'm taking up so much time. I'm trying to go through this quickly. I talked about the commissions and boards. I'm going to leave this screen up, and when we send this out, by the way, I put links into the pages for all of our commissions and boards. I think these are largely self-explanatory. And then the types of permits, I think this is important, are the permit that most people will end up working with us on is called a ZDR, the Zoning Development Review Permit. It really is intended to be sort of a all-encompassing permit for whenever you're doing development for our process and our code review. So like I said, it can be from anything as small as a fence to everything as large as a skyscraper. It incorporates our entire process. It includes if you require a hearing at the zoning board or at the planning commission. And then when ZDR is approved, you get a record, which is your sort of official record of zoning approval, which is called a ROSA, or Record of Zoning Approval. But we also review and on the one-stop permitting system, you could also apply for a master plan, or you can petition the city to change the zoning on a group of parcels. We also approve subdivisions and consolidation of parcels of land. And we have what's called a property certification, which is something that happens every time there's a real estate closing within the city. So if there's a refinance, or if you're buying a new home and you go through those closing papers, you'll find something called a property certification that where we're certifying that how it's zoned, how whether or not what you're intending to use it as is permitted, and whether or not there are any violations on the property. All right. I have this handy screen here with some of the resources from our website. Please take a look at this. Those are all linked in there, and covers a great deal. And I highlighted this zoning FAQs. We have a ton of content in there for that covers a lot of different areas. And then I wanted to dive into our zoning map a little bit, because I think if you're thinking about where you might do some work with the business, if you're looking at if you're scouting locations, if you're even thinking about your own home and what you might want to do, or looking at a vacant parcel and thinking about you might want to build something, this is really a huge resource where you can explore a lot of a lot of the just beyond what the zoning district is, and I'll show you. So this is what the zoning map looks like when you pull it up, and there's just a simple search bar, and you can type in an address. I don't think that you can use the parcel IDs yet, but I think that's something we have our geographic information systems team working on. And as you zoom in, you can see the zoning districts, names of some of the major streets populate, and then I don't know, why don't we zoom further in around here on the north side. You can start to see the parcel layers. And then when you zoom all the way in, and it's going to take a second on my computer, you'll even start to see a little bit more information, like the size, the boundaries of these properties. And you can see some, these aren't perfect. They're, but you get a sense of where the structures are relative to where the lots are. But the measurements are correct. I mean, that's the data that comes from the county. So it'd be the same thing that's on the county's real estate website. And then if you click on a parcel, it'll pull up a window that shows the parcel ID, and it has a link to that ID on the county's website. And so, you're right there. You can see who owns it. You can find, more information, the county's real estate information. And then there's a little arrow down here to toggle between the pages, and then it'll tell you what the zoning district is. This is our local neighborhood commercial district, which is really our typical neighborhood business district, one of our most common commercial districts. It also allows residential. It also allows a number of other types of uses. And it's really intended to keep that sort of traditional small business character that we see throughout so many of Pittsburgh's neighborhoods. This is East Ohio Street. So if you think about the scale of the properties and the buildings there, the LNC district, the regulations within that district are intended to, to continue just that type of scale and that type of context. And then there's a link to the zoning district definition. So it actually it'll open up our zoning code. And I have a link for our zoning code. I'm not going to wait for that to load. And it has a link to the zoning website, our main page, with all of that information that I was telling you about, like our FAQs. All right. Also, there are these tabs over here, these little windows. This first one is your menu, and there's a ton of content here. You can turn, if all of those parcels are, cluttering things up, you want to look at things differently, you can turn those off. We have different environmental overlays here, and actually I'll turn the parcels off just so that it's a little easier to see. We have our riparian zone, which has to do with development on the riverfront. We have our city's floodplains, and you can see, how far some of the floodplain districts reach into the land. We have our landslide prone overlays. So you can see on some of the city's hillsides, there's special regulations that help protect from new development causing landslides. We have our steep slope overlay, and we have undermined areas where there had been mining. We have regulations around that. We have the city's historic preservation sites. Let's see. That should show up. Sorry, there it is. The Mexican War streets are over here. I'm not going to go through every single one. And then we have our registered community organizations, which are, here they're all listed, which have additional process and oversight of development in those areas. And then of course you have all the zoning districts, your zoning district outlines, and you have a number of other important layers that you can turn on and off. And, it depends on where you are in the city and how those impact you. But I just wanted to sort of give you a drive through what can be done on the map. You can even measure things on the map, and you can change the base layer to like satellite imagery if that's helpful. All right. Dave, I believe this is where I hand it off to you.
Okay, so one of the questions we get a lot, and I think we're involved some of the questions that we got in advance from group is how to verify existing legal use. So we'll overview this, and I think there are some follow-up on Corey's end, if I recall. So a document called a certificate of occupancy is issued by the city. It's a legal document confirming compliance with the zoning and building codes applicable at the time that certificate was issued. The CO is issued by the building code official after past final inspections is granted. And there is also an administrative audit that PLI performs on all permits to ensure that conditions are met, such as there might be a requirement from Planning Commission or some other agency, and making sure all of those are met before we authorize occupancy. The certificate describes the permitted use of the building, space, and property. Modern certificates will identify both the zoning use type and building code occupancy group classifications, the associated PLI permit number, and variances associated with approval. And then the certificate of occupancy remains valid if the property owner or lessee changes. So, if you're moving into a space and it was a store, you're continuing to be a store, just because it had a different lessee on the certificate is not a need to obtain a new certificate. And then how to verify this, two primary methods. One is to search via this URL on your own. If you don't have access, computer access, or you're having trouble finding something, PLI records, email will help search and confirm to see if we can find anything else. A couple of notes: using the star symbol helps in the search process as a wildcard. So for example, if you put Carson in between those wildcards and then you searched, you'd get every certificate we've issued where the street name includes Carson. If you then modified that to say 1731 wildcard, Carson wildcard, you get all the certificates issued for 1731 and with Carson as the street name. So the next one just shows that example real quick. Hey, what happens when I use those wildcards for this specific combination? You pulled up 4 certificates. I just note the first one and the third one are related to mechanical equipment, but we'll take a look at the certificate number 216868 and then 16B00506 in the next slide. And just an example of what you might see when you get an actual certificate. So on the left-hand side is the 21688, and you'll see this was issued, I think, I forget, the 50s or 60s. And the information on that is a little bit less than the one you see on the right, which was issued more recently. And then you would look at these to see what is the current legal use, and we would be looking for the most recently issued certificate for each floor or tenant space. So for larger buildings, the use typically varies by floor. So you would want to search all the certificates if you're looking at a tenant space on the first floor, look through all of them and see which one indicates the first floor and which one was the most recently issued, and that will be considered legal use by both zoning and PLI.
Am I freezing or is Dave? I think it might be on my end.
I think Dave is freezing.
Am I?
All right, maybe.
Okay. When did I start freezing? Sorry.
I heard everything you said, but it's
We can hear you. Your screen was just frozen.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks. Sorry.
moving on.
And then moving on to, do I need a permit? If you modify interior finishes such as painting, wallpapering, tiling, carpeting, cabinets, countertops, no. If you have a valid certificate of occupancy and the use remains unchanged, yes. If there's no certificate, or if the use would be different from what was there before. And we wouldn't regulate the work. You would just need applications to approve the new use. Similarly, well, another instance, we would not regulate at all if you're installing loose furniture, fixtures, or equipment. If you remove interior walls or doors, whether or not they're structural or furred out walls, yes, you would need a building permit from PLI. If I paint the exterior of the building, generally no. The exception is yes, if the building is located in a historic district or an individually locally designated historic structure. Otherwise, neither agency would regulate painting. And if in terms of exterior finishes such as siding or veneers, a PLI permit would be required. And then Corey, sorry, I meant to coordinate with you. ZDR would sometimes be required. I don't know if you want to outline that, or.
Yeah, I mean, I think the unfortunate classic answer from zoning is it depends. And it would depend on if you're doing exterior renovations to a commercial building, then it's more likely to have a requirement for a zoning permit and some review under some of our ordinances, and perhaps even design review. But if it's a single family home or something otherwise like a small scale replacing windows, if it's not in a historic district, then it's probably not going to require any additional permits.
Thanks. And then if you replace, enlarge, or install new either exterior doors, windows, or modify the storefront, you will need a building permit and a ZDR. So talking primarily here about commercial structures. The same would apply for PLI if it was a residential structure. If there are no changes, renovations to use of a tenant space, but the use has changed, do you need a permit? Yes, you would need a ZDR, or zoning development review application from zoning, and then a PLI occupancy only permit. And the occupancy only permit is the type of application where we review the use and understand that there will be no intended modifications to the building. And then the next go through other elements of the structure. If you replace lamps in a light fixture or install or remove cord and plug connected equipment, we would not require a permit. However, if you're installing new light fixtures or receptacles or otherwise modifying the branch circuit wiring, you would need an electrical permit. If you're installing new distribution equipment such as panel boards, transformers, etc., or a new service, yes, you would need an electrical permit. And then a quick note that installation of exterior electrical generators, transformers, and solar PV panels require a ZDR. Can you do next? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought I did.
Maybe I'm frozen on my side. Are we still on lamps?
It's still showing the do I need a permit slide.
Dave has several of those. Yeah. I see mechanical fire alarm
Okay,
suppression.
sorry, I'm just not shown on my side. That's okay. I will, give me 1 sec.
Hopefully everyone else is seeing.
Yeah, I think I'm just having some trouble. Sorry about that. So if you replace a component or a part of mechanical equipment or install a cord and plug related portable heating, ventilation or cooling equipment, you wouldn't need a permit from PLI unless it voids an equipment listing or creates a hazard, which would be pretty atypical.
I was getting ready to say the same thing. So we still see the lamp slide. I know you got a
Okay.
couple title, do I need a permit? But we're still seeing that lamp and light fixture slide.
Yeah, I think you'll just have to unshare your screen really quickly, Corey, and then reshare it. That will just update.
I'm sorry. Let me do that. 1 sec.
It's all good. We all
Oh,
know.
it says it's paused.
Yeah, no worries.
Weird.
No worries.
Technology is great.
Yeah, and after having done virtually everything virtual for 2 years, you'd think I'd be able to get through a presentation without it crashing, but all right, let's try again here. All right, are we back?
Yep.
Right slide?
You're
All
good.
right.
So as I was saying, if you're replacing a part or a component or installing cord and plug connected portable equipment, you don't need a permit. If you modify or extend an existing mechanical, ventilation, exhaust, or cooling system, including piping and or duct work, you would need a mechanical permit. If you're repairing, modifying, or extending an existing fire suppression system, yes, you would need a fire suppression permit. If you're repairing, modifying, or extending an existing fire alarm system, yes, you would need a permit. Sometimes the repair trips folks up. It looks like we have a question. Katrina, is that correct?
Yep, we have a question from Katrina.
Sorry, guys. I was just letting her know that I was getting lagged as well.
You get a little lag.
Yeah, I had the
Okay.
wrong.
Is it kind of caught back up?
Little.
Oh, it's lagging for everyone. Okay.
Is that me? And just a note that installation of exterior mechanical equipment requires a ZDR. And then just a note, apologies for the lagging. PLI permits have a category identified as minor alterations defined for each permit type. I encourage you to review PLI's website and talk with your design professional or trade license holder to see if they're applicable. The benefit of these type of permits is that they do not require design professional documentation, do not require design do not require PLI review unless the property is condemned. And typically these are issued over the counter to a permit holder or same day, next day, virtually, as long as their license is valid. And the some edge cases include when city planning review is required. They would need to approve the permit before we could release it. But as soon as they approve it, the permit would be approved and issued. In terms of submitting a permit right now, due to COVID and some other issues, everything is virtual. So this is the portal for One Stop PGH. And I think, I can't remember, I may have coming soon. We will be moving into 412 Boulevard Allies, but that will hopefully sometime later this year. Sorry, mixed the order of slides. So in my mind, when we do move into 412 Boulevard Allies, we'll have a public counter that's centralized, is physical submission for PLI permits, zoning applications, and DOMI permits. And we'll also include small meeting spaces and staff to help provide guidance. I think the other slide that I forgot about, Corey, if you want to go back one, is the benefits to submitting on virtually. If you can, you will get direct access to plan review summary reports for reviews, whether from PLI or zoning. The software also includes the ability for reviewers to redline drawings, and you don't get those red lines if you don't use the portal. So that is helpful in terms of communicating issues on the drawings. The other is you get direct access to the history, current status of the permit, and the system identifies service level agreements or anticipated dates for review or response by each agency. And the system provides notification updates. So after reviews are complete, if you submit via the One Stop portal, you'll get an automatic email saying, hey, you need to take action. Our staff is also following up outside of the system, but having the automatic notification is good for you, I believe, of value. And I think that's about it. I don't know. I think we can move on. And then overall process, there's some variation, but really these steps are pretty much the same throughout. So submitting an application, and generally those will require a fee, and then required documents, and those required documents will vary by application. But those are the two primary requirements for submission. Once they've been accepted for review, the reviews are, those applications are reviewed for compliance, and that would be the same for zoning or PLI. Zoning's reviewing for the zoning code compliance, PLI is reviewing for the building code compliance. For PLI permits, there is a, for all permits, there's an issuance process. For the PLI permits, there is a license requirement, and there is a portion of the fee also due prior to issuance. And after issuance, it goes through an inspection process, and the inspections are to ensure conformance with approval and with code compliance. And then permit completion, that's where we audit completion, and then if the permit includes a certificate, where we would issue a certificate of occupancy. And then understanding just process status in terms of one-stop submission. If it's submitted, that means our staff has not yet reviewed the submission for compliance with our standards. If it's an application incomplete, that means something's missing. And once it's in the reviews process, in review means it's waiting city review. If it's an applicant revisions, that means it's on the applicant to resubmit. During issuance, application finalization. Question from the chat, is there a rough timeline that goes through the process? So for submission through the portal, we are responding to submissions within approximately 1 business day from submission. Reviews differ within department as well as between PLI and zoning. On PLI's end, if it's a commercial permit, initial reviews are within 30 business days and revisions are within 15 business days. For residential application, it is 15 business days and 8 business days. And then Corey.
I was
It
afraid you
depends.
were going to ask me.
Yeah.
I don't have our SLAs memorized like Dave does. And we have, you know, a lot of different review types. So there's a little bit more complexity depending on where and what the development is. But generally similar, you know, for our shorter sort of initial reviews, I think it's a 5 business day turnaround. And then for some of the more complex ones, they can be 15 or even 20 business days.
And issuance, application finalization. This is on PLI permits. This is the process by which an applicant identifies who's performing the work, and then that trade license holder accepts the assignment, pays fees. Once that process is through, it goes to ready to issue. That just means on our end, we need to verify the license prior to issuance. For inspection, pretty straightforward processes for inspections: passed, partially passed, failed, canceled, and waived. Waived come up because we do have standard configuration of our inspections. They don't apply at all times. And then when the permit is complete, the status says complete. If there was a certificate, you know the certificate has been issued because there'll be another status after that that says certificate of occupancy issued. Then tracking or verifying a permit, if you're not familiar, Civic Central is I think pretty powerful tool. It includes all departments, but it's a great way to check on a building permit, a zoning application, also PLI enforcement actions. I think there's a little bit more information on the next screen, but encourage you to look at that.
I'll add on Civic Central, it also has the zoning, all of our different types of permits, and as Dave said, but you just add that it's open, it's available to everyone in the public, has customizable searches. And since this is Pittsburgh, people want to be nebby, look at the neighbors, what's going on in the neighborhood. You can use it for that. And I'm sure there are other ways to use it that are important to business owners and other individuals.
And you can set up your account. You could say, give me an update for a specific area, but it gets updated every day. It provides valuable information about applications, the application or permit number, the type of application or permit, submission date it was submitted, current status, history, and it would include on PLI permits, and you know, there was an inspection performed and whether it was passed. partially passed or failed. So it is a great resource to confirm what's going on with a project. Additionally, One Stop PGH portal has an ability to search. It is a little more limited with Civic Central. Obviously, it's map-based, but One Stop has similar search functions by application number, license number, address, parcel, etc. Verifying things during the process. Inspections, as I noted, are identified when they're performed on Civic Central. The other is if your permit holder has a One Stop PGH portal account, every time PLI records an inspection, a inspection report is automatically generated. So you could ask your contractor for copies of those and to verify. So if they say they got a pass on an inspection, say, show me the report. And that's a great way to substantiate whether or not you're being provided accurate information. The other, to confirm that there's a permit, for all PLI permits, whether it's a building permit, suppression permit, etc., the permit holder is responsible to post the permit on the job site and where it's visible. And that's important because it lists the permit number, the work that was approved, who it was issued to, etc. So if they say, I've got an electrical permit, again, where's your permit? If they can't produce that document, signs are if they don't have a permit, or they're not complying with our standards for posting. One of the other questions that came up were about home occupations. They're regulated both by zoning and PLI. On the PLI end, we published a code interpretation regarding this because we're getting an uptick. I will say there are some differences that are noticeable on the building code side. It does allow for additional employees in some of the regulations. So, but I'd point you to the bulletin for more info and then defer to Corey to give an overview of how the zoning code regulates it. Although I should probably note when you get into this type of use under the building code, it brings in portions of the commercial code requirements because you're now using a house for something other than a house. So it brings in life safety requirements, including potentially suppression system and requirements to provide access, handicap access to the area used for it, depending on the nature of the use. So there will be potentially implications depending on the nature of that home occupation. And again, see the bulletin for more info.
Hey, David, I believe there's a question in the chat for you. I'll read it out. Here it is. I will be purchasing a building for my painting firm. Would I need a permit saying that I'm occupying it for this business?
You would need it to say that it's for use as a business. I think, Corey, that's a safe.
Well, I mean, actually, that's a great question because it's a great real world example, and we have, even just on the home occupation screen there, you have this like, oh, well,
I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Getting up, and it's my question. I can't hear you.
Oh no. Can you hear me now?
I think on her end it was freezing. I see her now.
Yeah, it was like breaking up a little bit. I was like, oh no, it's my question. I can't hear you. All I heard was it was a great question. And
All right, it's all right. I'll start over. And you can flag me if it starts to break up again. This, so it is a great question, and the home occupation screen the slide here actually shows too that while something might be permitted under the building code, there can be different regulations that might be more limiting on the zoning code or vice versa. So with usually we have sort of different turfs, right? Like the reason for what we do is different than the reason for what building code does. Building code is really focusing on safety, how something is constructed, and our focus is really more on the community, public impact, neighborhood impact side of things, how something looks, where it is. So with a business, the one thing where we have the most overlap is around use. And that gets folks tangled up a lot, even architects who do this all the time get tangled up confusing our use categories with PLI, building code use codes. So on the building code side, and not to speak for Dave, but the use codes really have more to do with the building itself, not where it is in the city. If you're opening a new business, you're going to buy a building, opening a new business. The couple things I would say that you would suggest, I would suggest that you look into first and foremost is to see on one of the earlier slides, if there's a certificate of occupancy for that building, there should be, and what was approved there most recently. And then on the zoning side, you can look at the zoning map. Is it in a commercial district or one of our mixed use districts where a business typically, and so you said for painting, like
Yes.
as like an artist studio for yourself, or as like a business?
No, I'm a contractor.
Oh, okay. So for
Interior, exterior, commercial painting.
okay.
So professional office space, right? So you would have
Oh,
customers
as your
come
as
in,
your office. Okay.
right?
Yes.
You'd have customers coming in and you might meet with them to talk about various aspects, but you're not
Sure.
doing related activity within the space. It's really the financial and business end of it. Is that a fair
Yes,
statement?
like my team will meet there. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have meetings like with you there or things like that. So, yeah.
Gotcha. So that's probably just going to be considered an office. So looking at what area that building is, hopefully it's in a mixed use district, and hopefully it's the red flags to look for. Oh, Margot, can you hear us still? I see she froze up. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The red, I was gonna say the red flag to look for is it in a residential district? That may not mean it's like a huge problem, but it means it can be more complex. You wanna look and see, has there ever been a business permitted there before? Is it something that people got the proper permits for in the past? Yeah, but that zoning map is a powerful tool, and the looking up the certificates of occupancy will also help.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely looked into zoning when I was placed in Wilkesburg at one point. I was painting a house over there and there was an empty lot that I was like, oh, I'm gonna just buy it. It's like $2,000. It wasn't too crazy. So I was like, all right, but you couldn't put anything on it. They wouldn't let you. Like you had to like go through all these hoops and everything to do it. And I'm like, I just literally want to put up a shed and dismantle it and leave just so I can have my stuff in storage. And they were like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, what can I do on it? A tiny house is too tiny. A regular house is too big. There's nothing I can do with it. So I just left it alone. But yeah, I did learn a couple things about zoning laws, but this is a really good informative meeting. Thanks, guys.
Sure. And I hope that our zoning is more, I hope you will find the city of Pittsburgh zoning to be more welcoming and permissive. But yeah, we do, part of our
Sure.
job sometimes is to help people work around where something isn't permitted.
Thank you.
Oh, on the home occupations, I mean, I think this slide covers, the main points for zoning.
And then not a whole lot here, but I think looking to use the public resources, including there are general emails. I think Corey listed for his department as well as mine in terms of reaching out to folks to get answers. Those are good resources because they're staffed by lots of people and therefore typically gets a faster response than trying to reach out to a single individual who could be individually overwhelmed. So I would always champion those general emails, and then also feel free to reach out, escalate if you get in a jam, but start with those. And then the other, depending on what you're looking at, I would consider engaging a design professional, an architect or engineer. Most of PLI's permits, if there's any significant work, will require documentation from them. So engaging them early will help you get what you need. And they can also, generally speaking, they're pretty familiar with the zoning and building code requirements in our processes. So they can, I would say, generally help you get through that process quicker. And then if you attempt to do it yourself, not that you need it, but if you can engage a design professional, I think they would help you in the process. And then I'd also say, as an architect, selfishly, that design professionals can also add value to what you're doing and make recommendations to make your business more successful, but also do understand money is a short supply and can understand when people have a tough time doing that. So I think that's all I really had. I don't know, Corey, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I hadn't planned to make this the architect the architect show. I am not an architect, but I sometimes play one on in meetings, or I know enough to be dangerous. I wouldn't design anything for anyone, and I wouldn't want you to ask me to. But I have, as somebody who's a homeowner in the city who's done done work in my house. My family did a complete overhaul and renovation of our backyard, and kind of ripped everything out and started all over a while back. It was the biggest project we've ever done, and it really, on the scale of what most people do, wasn't that expensive or that much, but it was, for us, it was a big use of our budget. But we decided to work with an architect, and we're able to find somebody who was able to do it for a very reasonable price. I was surprised, how reasonable it is. I know cost can be a scary thing when you're getting into these projects, especially if you're really putting yourself out there. And so just to say, if you ask around, talk to it. I know there are other resources in the city around, finding design assistance. But it can't, the value that I got out of that relatively small part of the budget spent on the architect really made a difference. And then we see it all the time on our side of, as a reviewer helping out customers. We try to help people if they, need to just draw their own site plan or something like that. But, there are lots of folks that can help, that don't have to be a budget buster. We have our thank you slide. Um, we do thank you, and we appreciate your time. And I do hope you guys get a chance to go back through the slides and utilize all of the links, the emails that Dave talked about. Where we have folks available to help. I don't know if you mentioned it, Dave, on the permitting site during, at least most of the kind of typical business day, there is an online chat feature too, where you can ask people for help just in like,
Yep.
what button do I click,
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. I forgot. On the portal, a one-stop PGH portal, there's if during normal business hours, there should be a little green icon in the bottom right-hand corner, and it says something like "Talk to us." It's really powerful because it allows the staff who are on the other end to see what you're clicking through and be able to help you navigate versus any other method. We're trying to picture what you're seeing. This method allows the staff to see directly what screen you're on. So if you're navigating that portal, I would recommend that.
So we've talked a lot. Please ask us questions.
Now, I think the presentation was great. It was very informative. I know it was a lot to take in one evening, one session, but very detailed. And I think, if you guys provide us with like email addresses to follow up, I think we will have some questions from the audience.
Sounds good. Adam, you should have both of our email addresses. And
Yeah, I have both of your email addresses as well as the presentation. So those will go out to the entirety of the class, as well as and a recording of this webinar will go out to everyone as well. And honestly, like right now is your chance though. They're both here for a couple more minutes. Ask them if you have any questions left that you can't ask right now. Go ahead and ask them right now because they're still here.
And feel free to unmute yourself. You don't have to go through Adam or myself to ask a question.
I just as an aside, in the middle of conducting a round of interviews for jobs, and one of my favorite parts of doing interviews for our staff is I always say there's as long as we have time at the end, like you can ask us anything, that we can go out of the bounds of zoning within reason, but you have us. This is the time. If you're curious about like anything about what we do or who we are or anything like that, we're here.
I feel like they're feeling the pressure of getting married in Vegas, speak now or forever.
Hi.
Go ahead, Margaret.
So I have a question. When I was getting kicked in and out, but I overheard a part that you're speaking on painting, which is of course my profession. So in regards to painting an exterior, it would have to be a commercial building or a historical building. Is that what I heard? Where you would need a permit?
The only time you would need a permit for painting would be if the structure is historic. So in a historic district, or if it was a individually locally nominated historic structure.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of the city's historic districts are probably somewhat obvious, like around the area where Soldiers and Sailors is in Oakland, the actual East Carson Street on the south side, that business district is a historic district, Market Square, but some are less obvious, and so that zoning map has those layers where you could check. If you feel like, hey, this is an old building and there's a lot of old buildings and I don't want to get in trouble, you can always use that resource to double check and see.
Okay, I will look into that because there's a question in the chat too. I'm gonna order one for that, but I'm gonna get into that because there's a tavern that's on sale. I live on the south side, and I was like, "Ooh, what do I need for that?" It's like literally in like the roundabout. They just redid the East Carson, but it's like on the roundabout. It's an old bar and a tavern upstairs. And I was like, what would you need to buy that? Like what would be required to buy something like that? Like for the zoning laws, of course, because it would have to be occupancy. You would have to figure out the how many people can fit in there, and if the rooms, I guess, are livable, because it's a tavern and a bar.
Yeah, I think in a lot of those types of places, for zoning, it should be pretty easy there, as long as you're not doing substantial changes to it. Because the one thing about zoning is like, if a building was built 100 years ago and it was used as and it's been used as a tavern and with dwelling units above over the years, it should have a certificate of occupancy, but even if it doesn't, we recognize that it predated the zoning codes. And so we're not trying to take away the right for that to be what it always has been. So we have, ways to go through historic documents and try to verify that kind of thing.
I think it has one of those plaques too. I have to drive past it again, but I think it does have one of those plaques on it. But I'll get in touch with you guys after that.
Yeah. The question in the chat was, someone wants to create a reasonably priced live work space with a commercial kitchen. And is that a pipe dream? I don't want to speculate on, I think it's a good question, because I think we're seeing more of commercial kitchen, kitchens showing up as part of a residential, like a live work situation. And there are some places that are, some new dwellings that have been designed that can handle live work. Usually they're in like local business districts, the sort of like the traditional like shop on the ground floor with living space above. But I think it depends on the location and the structure itself. But Dave, I think there's probably more on the building code side. The commercial gets tricky.
It'll get, if you're looking to convert a dwelling to include this use, it will get a little bit complicated. You will need a design professional, and one of the requirements that gets triggered typically is a suppression system requirement, which are not typical for most, certainly dwellings, most of our stock within the city. If it happens to be a newer structure, there may be a suppression system, and that's less of an issue. There are also potential to look at alternative ways of complying with code, but I would say if you're anticipating that type of thing, I would talk to an architect and understand that you're going to end up paying for those type of services to evaluate it. So to be realistic on the scope you may be getting into.
And I think I've heard that I know of one project in the city on the north side, I think in Manchester, where a gentleman created basically like a shared like incubator where like there's like shared commercial kitchen space that people can come in and use, so sort of a work share situation. So I think there are people trying to solve those kinds of problems. And another thing I've heard of is like shared use of a commercial kitchen within an existing restaurant that's already has all of that stuff in place. So I think there are creative ways to approach it. Oh, and another thing we didn't say in the home occupation slide, that home occupancy, the really formal, like I'm gonna, for me, that usually comes up like if they have a state license requirement that they need to show that they have a certificate of occupancy to perform this business at their home. But more and more, and as we know through the pandemic, people are working from home. I'm at home. I've been at home all day. I didn't need a special permit to set up my computer and do my job at home. So, it doesn't have to be that formal. It's more if you're converting portions of your home to sort of more of an industry specific thing, like getting into the commercial kitchen or converting a garage, to an office or an art studio, is when we get, that comes more into play.
And I guess one other note, if you're actually looking to use commercial equipment on the scale of a typical restaurant, then it starts to bring in the safety requirements related to that. So a hood, exhaust system with a suppression system to put out any grease fires. Don't know that would be actually what you're getting into, but those type of things start to arise when you mix those two under the building code. Looks like we have another question about looking for a space to open a salon. I think looking at existing storefronts that had that use and then checking to see if there's a certificate allowing that use. Unfortunately, right now, we're working on it, but we don't have it set up yet. The records of our certificates don't allow for a search of the use. So it's really address or parcel based. So that would, I think, the best low cost option. The other is to find the space you want and then see what it's zoned for, and what the current certificate is. Once you go into a space to change the use, you're more than likely going to need an architect or engineer on the PLI side, but that doesn't necessarily need to be extensive and overly elaborate. It really depends on the building and what the current use is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the easiest thing is finding, as Dave said, if you can find a location that already has a certificate of occupancy as a salon. So if you're looking at, you're sort of scouting locations and you are able to find a business that already has, already has done that and it's sort of turnkey, then that's the best possible scenario. But, just like anything, if you're out searching for opportunities, I think the main thing to convey is, use that zoning map, use the certificate of occupancy search, as tools as you're going through. The thing that I encounter the most that people get into trouble, they end up making an investment, putting money into a place only to find out that, well, this place actually didn't have a permit or it's not in the right zoning district. And then, then it's an uphill climb to try to solve that problem, and even could potentially be, a loss. So, the information, we try to make the information as accessible as possible, try to make ourselves accessible to answer questions through our, the zoning at pittsburghpa.gov email and the app tech, to answer some of the basic questions.
Okay.
you know,
Thank you very much.
for sure. Any other questions for us?
Did we miss anyone's questions? Last call. All right. Well, that's going to close it out for today. Thank you both, Dave and Corey, for swinging by, giving us all of this awesome information. Class, I will be sending the recording of this as well as a copy of the presentation and some further information along in an email probably tomorrow during the day. So hopefully if you have more questions or anything like that, that'll be able to answer some of those questions. Like we said earlier, if you haven't yet, if you would like to be, please apply to be a member of the DBRC. There are tons of free resources for diverse businesses that are accessible. I know quite a few people on this call are members of it. They will attest to it. The DBRC newsletter, there's bids on there, literally free money sitting there waiting for you to take it, that if it's not in your spam folder, pull it out, look at it. There's free money for your business to apply and get on contracts, as well as upcoming webinars such as this one, and many more. So it's super important. Sign up to be registered on the DBRC, and also connect with us also on all of our social medias. We have social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram actually. So we're on all of them. Facebook's the big one. Connect with us on there and you'll see everything we have. That's all for tonight, everyone. Thank you so much. And I'll see everybody around. Corey, Dave, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for
No
having
problem. Thanks.
for the work that you do, Adam, and
Yeah.
Have a
Good luck,
good evening, everybody.
Thank you.